सो गाइस लास्ट टाइम हमने प्राइमरली आईटी सेक्टर और एक दो सेक्टर और फिनेंशियल्स वगैरह का हमने देखा था कि हाउ वी शुड गो अबाउट डूइंग वैल्यूएशंस फॉर दोज सेक्टर्स। तो लास्ट टाइम हमारा सीमेंट और स्टील मतलब पेंडिंग रह गया था। और भी सेक्टर्स हैं विच रवि भाई विल कवर, बट प्राइमरली विल बी डिस्कसिंग सीमेंट एंड स्टील टू स्टार्ट विद। सो उससे रिलेटेड आप लोगों की कोई क्वेरी या क्वेश्चंस रहेंगे तो वी वुड बी हैप्पी टू टेक दोज क्वेश्चंस। सो रवि भाई, एज एंड व्हेन यू आर कंफर्टेबल यू कैन स्टार्ट विद द थिंग, और if you want we can still wait for a couple of minutes. I guess some parallel spaces were going on, so our regular audiences are perhaps join in the meantime.
Sure, yeah. I guess there are now again interest in the market is back, so many people are again coming back to the Twitter spaces, and many people are hosting as well. So yeah, but good thing, yeah. Let's discuss about the FII data for last 3 days. Yeah, we saw the positive inflow from FII, which is a good sign. Other good sign for Indian market, at least I can say, is that oil has been on a lower range. That our WTI is at least below 100. Even today, it was 95, $96. So for Indian market, the oil is a very big concern because we import something 80% of our fuel requirement, and it's actually a very large size kind of import item in our import bill. So once oil is down, it helps both ways. It helps our current account deficit, it helps our inflation, and it also helps our currency movement, which has been depreciating for a while. So all in all, this is good. And anyways, we were discussing for a very long time that FII have pulled out near about 2 lakh crore since last mid-year. So at some point of time, they will feel that the valuation has been attractive enough to come back and or at least stop selling with the pace they were selling in the month of April, May, June. That's the only view I have. That you can't say I can't say that this has definitely reversed for sure, but this is a good sign that incrementally at least we will not have a selling which is 5,000, 7,000 rupees, 7,000 crore a day. And if there is intermittent buying and selling, that's okay, that we can absorb. But the pace of selling which we see in April, May, no one can predict whether it's behind or not, but it's good and welcoming sign that we are seeing some positive inflows from the FIA side. One thing, one data point which always intrigue many players in Indian market is how come we see the equal amount of DII buying when FII was selling, and now the thing is reversed. We saw intermittently there was some profit booking or some selling from the DII, and something FII was a buyer. But all in all, I can only say that rather than commenting how the direction would be, this is a happy signal. That's the only moot point we should take it from here. And in case oil remains stable, then I guess FII data should not be as bad as it has been in the month of April, May, but no one can say it for very sure. Coming back to our discussion for which like we started last week, we discussed BFSI sector at length, we discussed IT sector, and then at one point we discussed IT sector in detail with Amea. So he gave us very good insight on the IT. Today I thought we can discuss cement and steel. One point is that on the side I can say that I don't have very positive, very strong positive or negative view on most of the companies in this two space, but a few pockets I think value is emerging good in a cement space. But otherwise, it's a wait and watch mode. If I want to give an overall perspective at the start for both the sector, it is a neutral kind of stance I'm holding. Would like to see how the sector valuation pan out and how the things move from the government side. These two sector now, especially steel, metals and steel, these we call it cyclical sector. Every 3 4 years down the line, you will see there is very premium kind of valuation which is available in the market. Like they pen every kind of possible attribute which can happen in the sector, and then every 3 4 years you will see that companies are available at distress valuation. This is a continuing phenomenon. Every 3 4 5 years you will see this cycle, because these are what happens is it's a deep capex cycle that to run this business it requires huge amount of capex. First is at the sustaining level. To continue with your current level of operation you need a maintenance or sustainable capex. And then as India is growing economy, you need higher volume of metals, higher volume of cement. There would be incremental capex which also will be done by these companies. I'll talk in between bit intricate details of these two sectors, but since these are counter cyclical sectors, cyclical we say from an investment point of view are very counterintuitive. When I say very counterintuitive, it is like when you see everything going in your favor, that's the time when people start booking their profit. And there are times in every 3 to 5 years when everything goes against the players in the sector, like your valuation is distressed, your EBITDA per ton, be it metals, be it cement, it is at very low. It comes to a point where it becomes difficult to sustain the operations, and those are the time you will even hear that at this price it is difficult for companies to repay their debt and so on and so forth. Those are ideal time for any even the novice and learned kind of people to enter in this sector. Say earlier, before current phase, you will say that 2020-21, when everything collapsed, the metal price across the world also came down. We saw that oil was negative and so was the metal prices very depressed. At that point of time, the EBITDA margin for metal companies were very distressed. A standard Tata Steel in its Indian operation, if I say through the cycle, they make 10,000 rupees per ton as EBITDA. That time it fell to 5,000, 6,000 rupees. And now, I guess after this recent government moves where they have put restriction on export, sorry, the EBITDA per ton would be somewhere around 13, 14,000 right now, which is still above the median or the average which Tata Steel Indian operations has done for a long period of time. So this is counterintuitive. When you think that things are going very much across the board on your favor, those are the times you start booking your profit. In terms of valuation, these are companies which heavy with heavy balance sheet, especially for metals company. There's two distinction between metal and cement companies in India. Metal companies, since they are very heavy capex model, they carry decent or significant amount of contrary. They are also equally capex intensive, but somehow cement companies right now, if you see the larger players, they don't carry too much of debt on their balance sheet. And one thing I observed that market also analysts and investor doesn't like too much of debt in the cement companies. Somehow they don't like that they have a significant amount of debt on the balance sheet. Other thing is that this intensive industry, if you pick metals will be driven by global comparison, because a metal price across the globe would be same. You will get some kind of physical premium. Say in aluminum the physical premium is very high, it will be about 10% of your aluminum price. So a producer gets some kind of physical premium when he is delivering aluminum, and there would be some kind of physical premium in other commodities as well. But metal by far, it will follow a similar kind of trajectory across the globe. That is not the case in case of cement, because cement, as we all understand, you can't store for a cement for a very long period of time. It will convert to a lumps. And then the problem is cement, because it's a high volume low value kind of commodity, it will not travel very far. A company which have its market near to its grinding unit will drive higher EBITDA margin. And that's why we track cement prices in India in each of the jurisdiction. There are region wise cement prices. uh, so I see lots of speakers also been added if they want to add something before before we take any questions or talk deep in the sector. I guess we can ask someone else also to share their view on the both of the sectors.
Yeah, Ravi, Anish also tracks steel sector closely. So, Anish, if you have any thing to add or maybe ask any questions on what Ravi just discussed, so we'll be more than happy to listen to that.
Sure. Thank you, Prince, Wealthverse, and Ravindra, and all the participants and listeners. Good evening, everyone. Met very closely, and it's, I would say, very close to my heart. It being a cyclical sector, I am of the opinion that if one is can do a somewhat of a mastery over the global economy, then metals is a sector one can ride the wave, the cycles, and there's a huge amount of money that can be made in case you can encash on the cycles. But of course, just a word of caution, that's one of the most difficult things to do. But if you can do it with your hard work and your skill, then there's tons of money to be made out there. So basically, as Ravindra ji correctly pointed out, we had this 2020 wherein metals were kind of lying low, and then you had this COVID scenario and this problem. And the see what happened then is that I'll take the example of steel because that's the biggest in the chunk in the metals pack, since steel is the largest commodity which is used in construction and infrastructure across the globe, much more than aluminum and copper. Um, so basically, when COVID came, the most of the economies across the world, they kind of almost shut down. They went into lockdown, including India, and that was an extended period that was there. So during that time, it was very hard for the steel companies to continue the operations because the cost is very high. And when there is no global offtake, there's no demand, then they were running at probably at huge losses every single day. uh, but the way steel companies work is that their production is, it's not very easy to shut down the operations. They have the electric arc furnace, and they have the regular, they burn the coal and the coking coal and iron ore. So whichever method they use, whether that's burning, which creates the carbon emission, and that's one of the hottest topic right now, or they use the electric arc furnace. Both have their pros and cons. uh, Once you shut down the operations, the plant, it can take anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks to restart. So that's something which was a very, very difficult decision for a lot of steel companies and plants to take. So some of them did um, kind of shut down because they anticipated that the lockdowns may last for a couple of months. Now, when they shut down, the production did not take place from some of the major global steel companies. And once the economy started reopening because the lockdowns eased, there was a sudden surge in demand and there was no supply. Why was there a sudden surge in demand? Is because the economies, they wanted to make up for lost time and lost production and lost numbers, and they worked extra to cover up for that. Now obviously if they are doing that, then for the steel, which is a basic raw material for building, construction, and various industries like automobiles and others, the demand went up and the supply was not there, so there were supply constraints, and that led to a huge spike in the price of steel. And that made all the steel stocks kind of skyrocket, because from suddenly meager returns to they had the steel prices just shoot through the roof. So for example, I mean, in US, the steel prices which were quoting at just 400 $500 a ton, they went as high as $2,045 a ton. I mean, that's a huge spike in the price. Even in India, from 30,000 roughly rupees a ton, we went up to as high as 78,800 rupees a ton. But what has happened now is that, so that cycle, the companies rode and they made huge amount of money in the last 2 years. But now there is a slowdown in the global economy. We have high inflation. We have interest rates which are going up. Companies basically in the steel industry, they are highly leveraged. because they have massive scale of operations. It's very difficult to operate a steel plant at a very small level, because it's not remunerative enough to do that. So you have to have a certain scale of economy and operations to be profitable. So if you look at Tata Steel is the largest integrated steel player in the world, because it has its own mines. Um, Iron ore, 100% capacity is met in house, and coal mines also they have, but that meets only 25 to 30% of the requirement. So basically, you saw the last 2 quarter results were phenomenal for Tata Steel. I mean, the EBITDA was around 27,500 rupees per ton. But now with the slowdown and fall in demand and China problem, and the interest rates going up, and on top of that, the double whammy which has happened is the 15% export duty. The next few quarter results are going to be tough and challenging. So the EBITDA is likely to drop from that 27,500 per ton level to probably about 17 17 odd thousand rupees per ton. So that's a huge drop of about 10,000 rupees per ton, and that is why the stock has fallen all the way from 1534. It made a low of 827, and currently it's quoting at about 935 rupees. A slight technical bounce has taken place. So and if I give you a little bit about the latest situation, what's happening is that the steel prices in India have corrected because of this 15% export duty. Because if you see steel companies, they export anywhere between 15 to 30% of their production. So 15 to 30% of their revenue comes from exports. So the highest being Jindal Steel and JSW Steel, and Tata Steel roughly exports about 16 to 70% of its production. So the maximum hit is obviously the companies which have the highest exports, because the exports become unviable now. But now the Russian steel, they are trying to flood India's market. That's the latest news, and that's causing a bit of a trouble. The other factor is that due to the China slowdown, the housing sector has collapsed there. So the demand is not there for steel, because China is the largest producer and consumer of steel. The capacity is 1.8 billion tons. I mean, that's phenomenal. We are producing just 110 million tons, and they are producing more than 10 times that. So you can imagine the economy of scale that they have, and that's why they're able to move the prices of steel, which is an international commodity. So
Yeah,
sorry.
Anish, we have some speakers. They might be have some questions from Ravi and you. So perhaps
Yeah, sure, sure. So I think maybe I can stop here and you can ask the questions, and then I can go very specific because I have a lot of research and data. So it may be difficult to kind of speak everything. But yes, I think let's do it that way.
yeah, Shrikant, you can unmute and ask your question, please.
Yes, Prince, thanks for arranging the Twitter space. So last 2-3 Twitter spaces, I am facing problem for the speaker request. So I am a retail investor. So I don't understand any cyclical stock like the cement, like steel, like that things. I have quite different question. Can I ask?
Yeah, please
Yeah,
ask.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, and that question is for Ravi sir, and it is my privilege to talk always with Ravi sir for the various topics. So, in my portfolio, I generally own 14 to 15 stocks, and also one of the categories that one is large cap and another is like a small cap in the same category. Like that, for example, Divis Lab and the Loris Lab, like TCS and the Intellect Design Arena, like that things. So one is a consistent compounder like that things, and another one is a emerging giant that can become a bigger giant like that things. And I have diversified into the 6 to 7 sectors like the financial, IT, materials, chemical, consumer staples, consumer discretionary like that things. So Ravi, how is my approach in my portfolio? And another question is, and should I have to go proceed with that? Because currently I have 3 to 4 years in the stock market right now.
Okay,
Yes.
it will be very difficult, Shrikant. It will be very difficult to give a very generic answer, but let me give you a few pointers which might help you. First thing is, when you have selected different sector, one good point is the sectors are not correlated. Sometimes people feel they have 15, 20 stocks in the portfolio and the portfolio is diversified. What they miss out is their portfolio, few of the stocks bunch together and they move together. What I understand from what you explained in a very short time, that you have IT, you have banking, you have FMCG, and you have chemicals. So all this will have a different drivers, and hence your portfolio will be diversified in a sense that one thing you can do is try to see how is the weight in the Nifty 50 for different sector, and then you try to balance your portfolio around that. I don't say that you have the replicated, but you shouldn't be very far off that. If I say auto and discretionary is only 10% of the Nifty weightage, and you can't have 40-50% there. So some kind of pointer you will get from the weight you see in the Nifty 50. The second thing which you should do, I'm not sure how much you're trying to do right now, is something like, say, if you're selecting two company in the IT sector, one is TCS Giant and one is Intellect Arena. One thing mistake people might do here is, while allocating in between these two companies, you allocate equal amount. But that's my understanding is, if you are not very much into the investment, you have just started few years back, and you the investing is not your full time profession, it actually takes a very long period of time to understand what is driving a company earnings and share price thereafter. So what I suggest you can do is have a significantly higher allocation to the company, something like TCS. Don't take it an example of TCS, but is the company which is a larger one in the sector, which is vetted and covered by almost all people in the market. It gives some kind of positive loop to that company and positive loop to that investors which are attracted to that company. That if you select two company, one is a giant in the sector, another is a very very small cap. The small cap, the only problem will be you will get to know any problem towards the end only when the price has fully collapsed and the earning will collapse few quarters down the line. But if it's a large companies, then signal will start emanating very quickly to the market, that since so many people are tracking it, so many people have already invested in it. Other thing is, smaller companies move much faster. So if you have, say, allocation which is 20-25% of the amount which you have in the larger companies, if your call do well, then also you will make decent amount of money. But having an equal weightage allocation to the large and the smaller one, I think at this stage, when when you are trying to build your understanding of the investment world, then it's not advisable. And one thing I would say, someone who is trying to build the understanding for investment, have a decent allocation to the passive and passive investing style. Passive or balance, it gives a very good comfort to your portfolio, that someone is taking few fees, 1% kind of fees, or even you can go to the passive one, index investing. If someone is very cheap and doing a right allocation for you, and then you build your understanding with the remaining corpus of say 20-25%, and then for with that you fiddle around with different ideas, different sectors, and see what it works for you. See how you manage when there is, look, everything works fine when you are making money in the market. The only thing we identify whether market we are built for the market or not is during the drawdown times. So that will also help you gauge your feeling. If you feel that you are not owning the stock is owning you, then it's better to move towards passive. That's my advice for not even the newcomer or 5 years people who have experienced 5 years in the market, even for the people who have spent decade in the market. The problem which we also face sometimes, yeah, I also feel that I am not owning the stock is owning me. I'm so much worried about and reading so much about the stock, it is owning me. That's the time you have to take a back seat. So all these things will help if you have certain amount of allocation from the passive investing style. And rest, try to see if you benchmark your portfolio near around Nifty, and see how your portfolio, if it's, is it very much skewed towards one direction or the other. So that might help you.
Yes. Ravin, thanks for your answer. Referring to your answers, I follow generally I also invested in mutual fund, right, 5 years ago, and generally I invest the money that is not required for the quite 10 years that into stock market. And regarding the portfolio, so I generally do not invest more than 25% to the one sector, and my general allocation is that to 22% in the financial sector and consumer discretionary like 10 to 15 like that things, and also I don't own more than 8% in the stock, in particular stock. And regarding the large and the small cap company, I generally invest 70% in the large cap and the 30% in the small cap company, because I know that small cap are very risky, and we don't know about the previous performance and the past performance also, and how management will perform like that things. So for that I generally follow uh, their earning calls quarterly, and also gone through their quarterly conference call, and I also read the transcript for that. And for that I only own only 15 companies, because it is difficult to monitor the more companies for my portfolio. That's why I managed only the 14 to 15 that I can easily manage. And also I am new to the currently stock market, but I am currently learning through uh, uh, from the various tutor, the circle, and from you also, and where from Prince arranging the various spaces with the Aditya Khemka, various sectors like pharma, like that things, and learning, and that implementing in my currently portfolio. And thanks Prince for arranging the various session for the uh, retail investor like me, newly retail investor like me. Thanks.
Thanks,
Shrikant,
Shrikant.
Shrikant, your strategy looks sound. I would just say that stick to your this plan and have decent allocation from passive, which you are continuing with the mutual fund. So all the best, my dear. Very good.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Akshat, you may unmute yourself and
Thanks, Ravindra, for giving me the opportunity to ask the question. I want to know about the outlook on the sugar sector. Like everybody was like overboard on sugar sector, Gango and the ethanol story a couple of months ago. But now all of those have taken a seat back. So I just want to know ki, how is the outlook? Why sugar sector has taken the back seat now? Why what is our future outlook for the sugar sector? Can somebody advise me on this?
I will not have any clear-cut answer here, but we have seen a very, very hot kind of movement in the sugar side here. The thing is, when those kind of movement happen, when stock becomes 3x, 4x, lots of people who doesn't understand that sugar is also a kind of cyclical, they jump and say that this is not cyclical, this is something structural change which is happening here. I don't have very clear view, but I will point out few positives and few negatives. If someone else also have some view how one should play on sugar, then they can share. Look, sugar now. Uh, First I heard in my life about ethanol story was 2006. That this much amount of ethanol we can blend in sugar with displacing the requirement of sugar. And since then, lots of things were only story. Only it was in 2018-19 onwards, there was tangible movement from the government side, which made a case that there's some noise here. Someone can mute, or it's from me. Yeah, it's better. So only from 2018, when government came and changed the pricing policy for direct syrup and B molasses, C molasses, everything. Actually, the demand for ethanol moved tremendously. Right now, I guess we are blending something 9.5% on petrol. Diesel, mein to we haven't started blending to a significant level. The blending would be less than 1% types. So we have look till 15% now, till 15-18%. I think we should able to take the petrol blending, at least that it should be done. Even the people from the technical side, they says that 15-16% is good enough to run on a vehicle which is the current format. If you go to E20, which is ethanol 20% in a petrol, then you might need some kind of adjustment to the engine. But till that point, it is like you can easily go to double the capacity which we are doing right now. And if I see most of the companies, they have planned for capex, which will come in the course of next 1 to 2 years, and we will be about 12 to 15% during that time. Now think about the price. Price have tremendous given a tremendous run here. Few of the companies are like 4-5x. I don't track all the companies, but I really like the company like Balrampur Chini. It's like one of the pristine quality. If you go and see their balance sheet, sugar companies where there was always some kind of debt, there was always some kind of areas to the farmer. This company was doing buyback every year, even in 2018-19 onwards. From that time, I guess they bought back something 20-25 of their 25% of their outstanding equity. Apart from that, yeah, the thing is, lots of I think the growth also came from the government side because of the run up of the UP election. Lots of the grant, lots of the export incentive were offered because UP was going for election. That's my guess. I don't know how there was very little reversal which has happened till now. But incremental support for sugar producers, I don't think it will come that fast as it used to be in last 2 years. Apart from that, on the company side, I feel two companies stand out according to me. One is Balrampur and Dhampur. Rest you have to see in very much detail how you. One thing you need to do is how much is the total EV of the company, say market cap and outstanding debt, how much they are carrying on their balance sheet and market cap. Say a company like Sri Renuka, they will have some 12-13 thousand crore as a enterprise value right now, something 8-9 thousand crore of market cap and 3-4 thousand crore of debt on the balance sheet. Then what is the capacity and what is the potential EBITDA these companies can generate? So with that, you can have a look which companies is a cheaper or a expensive version. I don't have numbers with me, but that way you can actually gauge. But the only thing is, this would be a side element of the portfolio. I don't think still. I think this shouldn't be a part of the core portfolio here. It's a cyclical sector. We had a lot of bull run because sugar internationally sugar price moved from 14 cent to 2021. Right now it's about 19 cent. So lots of the euphoria which was built in the sugar was from two three side. One was oil was roaring. The second was sugar prices was roaring. There was a deficit in Brazil. There was Brazil deficit. There was deficit in Thailand as well, the two of the most largely exporting countries for sugar. So all this played, and we think that there was sectoral change which was happening in India. There was changes which happened since 2018, but as per to that changes, and then you see what the price movement happened. Price movement was equally steep. That's the only point I wanted to make.
Yeah, quick input. If Anish or Vajpayee ji want to add, then we will move on to next question. Akshat, any follow up on this or?
No, I feel Anish ji can throw some light on it. He has an expert view on sugar sector, I suppose. Anish ji, please.
Yeah, actually, sorry, my expertise is on metals and overall global markets. Not, I don't follow sugar sector very closely, so I do apologize for that.
Okay, thanks,
So
Ravindra ji. Thank
Anubhav,
you.
you have any questions or maybe anything?
Good evening, sir. Sir, I have a question regarding the cement sector. Sir, cement is generally a commodity business, but in India, it is not considered as a commodity business. Is it because of the catalyzation and consolidated by the large market leaders like Ultratech and all? So for that, it doesn't get a cyclical uh, view. Uh, so this is my question. Hello,
Yeah,
hello.
Anubhav.
So am I audible?
Yeah, Anubhav.
Yeah, yeah, we got your question. We got your question. Look,
Okay,
yeah,
sir.
your view is correct. If you look at top four companies of India, Sri Cement, ACC, Ultratech, and Ambuja, they got a very different kind of valuation multiple. Whichever way you slice the cake, even if you compare EV by capacity, they used to be somewhere around $180, $200. Now it's corrected 20-25%. If you compare it with on a PE level, they used to be 40-50 times, which is kind of benchmark for FMCG companies. If you see at EV EBITDA, they used to be 20 plus. But on the contrary, when you see at the return profile of those companies, ROCE, which we track, they were single digit or just touching double digit, 10%, 12%. They were not like something like FMCG generate. So, in a sense, it might be true. Look, cartelization, there might be the case, yeah, and I guess there was government who came down very strongly in 2010 or 2012 on cement companies and penalized the top cement companies for cartelization. That was one time when any sector was penalized that heftily. The penalty amount was 10-12 thousand crore in 2010-12. So if someone have a doubt on cartelization, it might be true because it has happened in the past, and we see that price move across region simultaneously. Other thing is, apart from the top four companies, if you see valuation as of today, then there is steep. They are very much closer to the replacement value. Say replacement value, or if I track Ultratech, where the new capacity which they have just announced, they are announcing the upcoming capacity at the rate of 85 or $90 per ton. And some of the fringe players, or after top four players, if you track few companies, their valuation would be in that range of 100 and below kind of dollar value per capacity. So there I see there is decent amount of value for cement companies. I actually published one video on Nuvoco Vista, which I like. The values I guess was somewhere around $85. It's a decent brand. It led by Mr. Karsan Bhai Patel, and the company's EV is about $84. They are making decent amount of. Look, cement also is kind of cyclical. Now you have to make an entry when the valuation comes cheap, and the companies are making low EBITDA per ton. And if you can understand the reason for low EBITDA per ton, say a normal cement would a cycle would make 1,000 rupees EBITDA per ton, but when in a situation right now when the freight costs are heavy, when the thermal coal prices are expensive, thermal and pet coke, so your cost of production and freight diesel is very expensive. So you're transporting cement produce to the consumer market becomes expensive, and that eats away somewhere around 300 rupees per ton. So that is one reason you're having, say, I don't remember right now the companies which published the result was Ambuja, I guess. Muja or ACC. So the EBITDA was somewhere around 600, 650 rupees per ton. So you have a shrinking of EBITDA per ton. You have a shrinking of the valuation also, and nothing remains static in this cyclical sector. Yeah, these things will turn. So you have to identify the companies where you are comfortable with the valuation. I agree. Top four companies still are very much premium to the valuation benchmark, any valuation benchmark you might be carrying. Apart from their historical value, they always been traded. If you take a history of last 10 years, they always traded that this expensive. But apart from those four, I see there are value in few of the cement companies I have checked.
Manish, you have anything, any input on this, or maybe Vajpayee ji?
So cement basically, Ravindra ji has correctly pointed out everything. And see, cement is basically a domestic commodity. It's not an international commodity like metals and steel. So it is basically controlled by the domestic factors. The international factors do not have much of a role to play in it. But one of the factors that is there during monsoon, the construction activity goes low. So no low or a standstill. So that time the demand is less for both cement and steel. And recently, I mean, just an observation is that just like steel, the cement companies are having a problem because they're getting a hit on their margins. So the input cost is very high. And that is what is causing the problem in the profitability of most of the cement companies have come down. And that may take some time to come back to the high profitable days. uh, you know um, but they've probably seen the worst, and I think that things will get better from here, because once the economy bottoms out, comes out of this cycle of high inflation, high interest rate, and that probably will happen sometime next year. Then what will happen is that before the economy bottoms out, the market is going to bottom out, and these cyclical sectors, whether it is cement or these capital goods sectors, they will bounce back very sharply, because then there is an expectation that the economy is on the revival path, and then the offtake of cement and capital goods and steel and everything will go up. So from that perspective, yes, cement is a good sector to invest in. But again, as Ravindra ji correctly advised perfectly, that do it when the valuations are low, and the valuations will come up. So you will get a good rate of return, because Indian economy is fundamentals are very strong, and it will bounce back quite sharply sometime next year. That's my take on it.
Thanks, Anish. So audiences,
Sir,
like, yeah, Anubhav.
so I have another question. So it is based on two companies, BEPL and Ionos. So they are into ABS polymer. They produce some hard plastic type of substance. So it is a cyclical sector. So I want to just ask, are you tracking this sector or not?
Okay, I wanted to say something on cement first. I just posted one comment on cement. I prepared a video where you can see what the demand cycle pan India and what the player, what the EBITDA profile, and then I presented a case for Nuvoco Vista, which I felt was attractively valued. The only thing which you should track on cement is how much EBITDA per ton they are making through the cycle, how much they are lower currently, how much their valuation has been through the cycle, and how much that is lower currently. If if the valuation is dramatically down some 40-50%, if you take 100-120 dollar as a benchmark level, and you get something which is generating decent amount of cash, though these are not recommendation. Some companies, if I want to point out something like Nuvoco, Dalmia Bharat, and something like Heidelberg, which has been paying cash to shareholder or reducing debt dramatically, those you can consider they are attractively valued. You can check if you can see a message I posted on our this chat link. I posted one video for Nuvoco Vista. Coming back to BPL and Ineos, I haven't tracked them closely, but a few pointers for both the companies. If you go and listen to Ineos Q4 con call, it is very apparent that the MNC parent India is not focus market. So Ineos history is they wanted to delist somewhere around 500, 550, 1, 2 years back. When they went to the market, the shareholder wanted a price of something around 1100. After that, promoter, the parent MNC, sold a significant percent of stake, I guess 14-15%, some 3-4 months back only. In last 1 year, Ineos has paid something around 300 rupees dividend to the shareholder. So what everyone along with me was trying to gauge what's the plan of the company, how the cash flow will come forward in future. The company's communication was very bad. If you listen to Q4 con call, it should be there in YouTube. It was like India is not their focus market. So whatever cash or only solace I found is that since it's a MNC company, whatever cash they will generate, they will pay it back to the shareholder. Which they have done in last 5 6 months as well. Apart from that, what I understand from BEPL, they are into the same market. The styrene is the main product. It's a good replacement, I guess, for the plastic. It's mainly been used in automobile. BEPL, the other good thing is at the 2000 crore market cap, something 200 300 crore is the cash going for a huge capex plant. India, for ABS, I guess India import 30 40% of the requirement. And INEOS, and there are only two players. INEOS is not building on the capacity, but BEPL is trying to build, their capacity is about 60 70,000 tons a year, and they are planning to take it to 2 lakh. So there is demand in India. There is company which is ready to take that demand on the BEPL. Only concern is how the share price moves now. I get bit dicey because it's moved 5x, 10x in 1 year time and then fall 80, 90%. So that thing gets me worried on BEPL. Otherwise, with the kind of cash they are generating and the plan they have, it looks sound. The only discomforting factor is how the stock price moved in 2018, some that 5x, 10x, and then it fell dramatically. So might be something that gets investor worried.
So, is it because the sector is deep cyclical?
No, no, yeah, there's no deep cyclical. Think about this. The market cap of the company is 2000 crore and they are planning to 2x the capacity here with the 500 crore capex. So there's no deep cyclicality. You can say it's a duopoly market, and a good amount of requirement for India comes from import. But I will not. Deep cyclical is, look, deep cyclical you call where there is huge capex requirement and the gestation period is long. Say I decide on putting the capex today, and then it takes 2 3 years for that production to come to the market. Then it's a deep cyclical because nothing you can change overnight. Say FMCG and all, the production can be increased, shift can be increased, and then the production can be available to the market at a shorter notice. But something like metals and all, if you have demand growing, you can't supply during those times. Even deeper cyclical would be something like shipbuilding and all. So a deep cyclical is when you can't address to the demand requirement in a short span of time.
राइट रवि. सो वाजपेयी जी, आप भी काफी देर से सुन रहे हैं, तो जो भी हमारा डिस्कशन या जो सेक्टर्स का रहा है उस पर आपका कुछ टेक्निकल टेक हो तो बताइएगा. और जो हमारे ऑडियंस हमारे साथ जुड़े हैं, अगर उनके और कुछ क्वेश्चंस हैं तो दे कैन सेंड देयर स्पीकर रिक्वेस्ट, और अगर लिमिटेड टाइम में दे हैव इनपुट टू ऐड, देन आल्सो दे आर वेलकम टू द पैनल. Anubhav, I hope you got your answer. Anish, anything you have to add on Anubhav's question?
No, that's fine.
So, Ravi भाई, और कुछ और एक आधा सेक्टर आपका लग रहा है कि we can discuss for today, और maybe in the meantime अगर कुछ questions आते हैं तो कोई और सेक्टर वैल्यूएशन या अनीश जी आपको कुछ डिस्कशन के लिए लग रहा हो?
या क्वेश्चन आएंगे तो देख लेंगे. मी एंड अनीश कैन डिस्कस अबाउट मेटल्स. आई गेस ही हैज लॉट्स ऑफ डेटा पॉइंट टू शेयर. आई कैन आस्क माय क्वेश्चन टू अनीश एंड देन वी कैन टेक दिस डिस्कशन यार. अनीश, दैट्स
Sure,
फाइन.
Ravindra.
या एक बात बताइए, यू आर कंफर्टेबल विद हिंदी आई गेस, अनीश?
Absolutely.
या
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बोलिए.
वन थिंग आई हैव डाउट यार. मैंने ना अपना करियर मेटल से चालू किया था आज से 10 12 साल पहले, 12 13 साल पहले. ओके.
जी.
जब करियर चालू किया तब से यही बोलते थे कि चाइना ग्रोथ इज अ बबल, इट्स डेट फ्यूल्ड, राइट? They build ghost cities, they build infrastructure which no one use, they build housing which no one use, and so on and so forth. My only concern is now I am seeing the first sign of that bubble deflating. और अब हम बोल रहे हैं कि यार गवर्नमेंट वहां पे इकोनॉमी को ऐसे बैठने नहीं दे सकती बिकॉज अदरवाइज द गवर्नमेंट इटसेल्फ विल कोलैप्स. I am failed to see what of my logic was correct. The belief which I held for 10 years that China infrastructure, real estate, everything is a bubble and government is pumping money, or to think that they will keep on pumping money just to keep themselves in the power. What's your view?
So sorry, I have a bad cough. So basically ना ये जो चाइना है कि सी इन्होंने हाउ कैसे ये बन गए इतने ग्लोबल काइंड ऑफ वेरी स्ट्रांग इकोनॉमी. तो उन्होंने
Sorry, by mistake I mute everyone. Anish, you unmute yourself and
यस. अच्छा, तो मैं कह रहा था कि जो चाइना है उनका जो ग्रोथ हुआ है दैट हैज बीन फिनोमिनल इन द लास्ट 2 to 3 decades. एंड उसमें मैन्युफैक्चरिंग पर उन्होंने बहुत ज्यादा फोकस किया है एंड उसके वजह से वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग ग्लोबल पावर हाउस बन गए. नाउ रिसेंटली व्हाट हैज हैपेंड इन द लास्ट डेकेड और सो, आईटी की तरफ बहुत ज्यादा वो ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी इज मूविंग. सो एवरीथिंग इज मूविंग टुवर्ड्स डिजिटाइजेशन एंड ऑनलाइन वर्ल्ड और आपका एनालिटिक्स डेटा. तो द होल ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी इज चेंजिंग नाउ. तो चाइना हैज रियलाइज्ड कि अब ये जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हम जो कर रहे थे कि मैन्युफैक्चर एट दिस ह्यूज scale and then flood the market with cheap goods, irrespective of the quality, वो नहीं चलने वाला in the long run, because the big money is in the online world and in the software and IT, because that is the future. सारी कंपनी सारा बिजनेस ऑनलाइन जा रहा है एंड मोस्ट ऑफ इट चले भी गया है. तो वो लोग एक फंडामेंटल शिफ्ट कर रहे हैं कि दे वांट टू मूव अवे फ्रॉम मैन्युफैक्चरिंग एंड दैट इज व्हाई यू सी दैट उनका जो दे आर नॉट विलिंग टू सपोर्ट थिंग्स व्हेन थिंग्स गो बैड. अभी हाउसिंग सेक्टर जो कोलैप्स हुआ है एंड ये एवरग्रैंड, दे डिडंट स्टेप इन टू रेस्क्यू द कंपनी, बेल आउट. इतना बड़ा जो बिलियन 400-500 बिलियन डॉलर का उनका जो डेट है, दे डिड नॉट डू एनीथिंग अबाउट इट. एंड उनका कॉन्शियस डिसीजन था कि ये जो प्रॉपर्टी कंपनीज हैं, डेवलपर्स हैं, इन्होंने इतना ज्यादा लीवरेज किया है, इतना डेट किया है, देन दे केम विद दैट 3 रेड रूल एंड दैट काइंड ऑफ थिंग कि अगर आप उसमें आते हैं तो देन देयर इज लॉट ऑफ रिस्ट्रिक्शंस दैट विल बी पुट, बिकॉज उनको रियलाइजेशन हो गया कि ये जो एसेट बबल जो बना है इससे हमको बहुत ज्यादा नुकसान हो सकता है. एंड वी आर गोइंग इन अ डायरेक्शन विच इज नॉट व्हाट द ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी इज गोइंग इनटू. सो हमारा जो एम है दैट विल नॉट बी फुलफिल्ड. एट द सेम टाइम द करंट गवर्नमेंट जो है दैट वांट्स टू रिमेन इन पावर. सो वो अभी उनका जो भी होगा इलेक्शंस इन दिस दैट, एंड अगर वो हो गए देन दे विल प्रोबब्ली रिमेन फॉर अ वेरी लॉन्ग टाइम इन पावर. यू नो तो तो वो जो उनका फंडामेंटल शिफ्ट हो रहा है अभी, दैट्स व्हाई यू सी ना चाइनीज जो आईटी कंपनीज हैं जैसे अलीबाबा है और ये सब हैं, क्या उनकी वैल्यूएशंस हो गई हैं. सो दे आर मूविंग इन दैट डायरेक्शन. उनको मालूम है जे कि अगर नहीं करेंगे तो इंडिया विल माइट समडे ओवरटेक देम, because India has rightly moved more than 2-3 decades back away from manufacturing into IT. And this is what they are trying to do. How successful they will be, we don't know. That remains to be seen. But ye shift away from metals and core sectors and all that is a very, very conscious decision they are shifting. And that is why things are moving away from this global manufacturing and and that's how इसीलिए तो आउटसोर्सिंग सक्सेसफुल हो गया था कि जो आपका कोर कॉम्पिटेंस नहीं है उसको आप मत करिए इन हाउस, यू गिव इट at a better price outside and then you concentrate only on your core business. तो मुझे लग रहा है कि ये जो फंडामेंटल शिफ्ट हुआ है ये समझना बहुत जरूरी है. एंड देन ओनली यू कैन ट्रेड सम ऑफ दी स्टॉक्स एंड ऑल दैट, बिकॉज द स्टोरी इज समवेयर एल्स. द ग्रोथ इट इज नॉट गोइंग टू बी इन मेटल्स एंड ऑल. ठीक है, मेटल्स रहेंगे, मैं नहीं कह रहा हूं नहीं रहेंगे, बट दैट काइंड ऑफ इंपॉर्टेंस विच वॉज देयर अर्लियर वो नहीं रहने वाला. वाई? Simple. Construction and real estate industry in China forms more than 29% of their GDP. And that sector has completely collapsed. Houses are not selling. Developers are going kind of almost bankrupt. They are accepting, barter system for payments for down payment to sell a house. In fact, investors, जो home buyers हैं, they are not making payments for houses which are not completed. तो ये जो सब चीजें हो रही हैं, this is really hurting their economy. And that is why, the metals, copper, ये भी देखो, they are quoting at like 16-month low, 20-month low, because demand is not there, ना. And वो आप वो core focus अगर वो रखेंगे when global economy is contracting, then वो और मार खाएंगे. So they are trying to shift away from that and then move in more into IT and other sectors which are more profitable for them from a long-term perspective.
also one point I would like to add: if you track any of the country, be it US, Japan, European, German, every country follow this trajectory. Once you achieve certain level of urbanization and infrastructure within the country, the demand for metals at least fall off by the cliff by 20-25%. Say US experienced this in 2060, 1960, 70. The Japanese, I guess, experienced the same kind of movement towards 1980. That once the urbanization hit that 65-70% pocket, and you have decent or very good infrastructure within the country, then your consumption for metal actually shrink dramatically. It comes down 20-25% in a very short period of time. This we didn't experience in China because, again, coming back to the same logic, the government in China was fueling the demand for metals to keep the GDP high. I also think that they can't continue, but till they are continuing, people will believe on the metal story. The only problem here is if if China reduce demand by 20-25% on any of the metal, there is no second China which can absorb that kind of capacity. So if you pick iron ore, 70% of the seaborne iron ore goes to China. If you pick copper, then 60% of the demand is from China. And I guess the production is also about 50%. Steel, they have about, I guess, 900 million ton of production and 800 million ton of consumption. So they export 80-90 million ton every year. So there is no country which can absorb that kind of displacement of demand. If China moves to a natural trajectory, which is like they have achieved that 55-60% kind of urbanization, and now the nature with the pace with which they were consuming metals earlier, it's no longer required. Once that sense comes to the Chinese economy, it will be a very different world for metal. That's why I don't have very clear view on metal, because when you start your career and you build something in your mind for 10 years, 12 years, and then you see something is happening, actually materializing, and then making a contra view to that is becomes very, very difficult. Another view, let's come back to the Indian market. uh, in 2016, when metal was at rock bottom, as I was saying in my opening remark, every 5-6 years you see a metal crash happen, and are available at distress valuation. During those time, Vedanta Hindalco was quoting at 60-70 rupees in 2016 February March time frame. What happened that government has to step in to bring that dumping duty and various kind of measures which help the metal companies to bypass that crisis. Now came the reverse of that cycle, that metal companies are making so much amount of money that it is actually hurting the metal consumers in India, be it auto, be it real estate, be it anywhere where the metals were used. And my belief is government actually acted bit late, because this super cycle of metal EBITDA in India was happening since last year, June, July onwards. They were minting money, not making money, they were minting money. And government just came about a month back in terms of reducing the profit margin which metal producers can make in India. And now we are hearing noises that government might make a reversal of that, just like something they have done on the oil side. What is your view? I think this actually, to bring inflation down materially, I think government need not should not take these measures away, which is like the curve on the exports, so that the price within the country, and bear in mind, right now Indian prices are very much similar to export prices. For steel, both the prices are somewhere around 62 63,000 rupees a ton. So we are not getting very much cheap version of Indian steel, because government have put some restriction on export. We are Indian consumers are actually paying on par to their overseas player. So my belief is government should continue in this, and metal price should fell by 10-15% more, so that the cycle which has been stopped, because real estate players were also commenting that we are getting hurt because of high metal prices. What's your view here? Just wanted to know.
Sure. So, see, basically, China, they expanded at a huge, capacity. I'm talking about building homes, real estate. And the offtake was not there. The demand was not there. So they thought that the demand will be there and the houses will sell like anything. Now, what has happened is in China, if you see some of the towns, they've become ghost towns. There's not a single person there. It's just half buildings which have probably been made, or some buildings which are ready, but nobody is there ready to shift in because those houses are not selling. So that is something that they want to change now. They have realized that we've pumped in so much of money there and a lot of it on leverage that this model cannot be sustainable in the long run. Now, coming to India, now in India also, this is what is happening in some of the places, not too much. We are far better off in terms of the real estate. But, if the China is, they have 1.1 billion tons, I think, is their kind of capacity, their annual capacity that is there, or somewhere around that, I think 900 million to 1 billion tons. If they are not exporting much right now. In fact, they're probably not even exporting at this moment. And the latest news as of today is that the Indian steel prices have gone to a slight premium to the import prices. So if you see the HRC, which is the hot rolled coils, they are quoting at 51,000 rupees, 51,600 compared to the import price, which is 49,100. So 2,500 rupees is the difference. And normally it's the other way around. We have that import parity. I mean, we have that difference, which is always there. So that is one change that has taken place because China is not exporting and their production has been cut. They are cutting because they have that carbon emission kind of a target by 2030, 2050. They want to go to zero carbon, and so those are the things. That's why they had the Olympics last year and all. They wanted to cut down and not have that pollution, close to the city where the Olympics were going to be, held. So what I feel is that if the government, yes, they should continue on this export tax for some time because the steel companies have made a lot of money. However, what the steel companies say is that we have put in so much money in capex that if for 1 or 2 years we make a good money and we recover some of that cost that we have put in, then what's the harm? Because we've in the long run it is going to pay back. However, the steel, if it is not being exported by these companies and they have invested in capex and built up that kind of capacity which they will produce, they can't leave that capacity idle, then where will that steel go? The domestic consumption is not that high to absorb that kind of excess capacity and that production which is there, because it's not going into exports. Now, if they were exporting between 15 to 35%, that kind of excess capacity might get dumped in the domestic market, which can cause a supply glut. And that is the reason the steel prices have come down and they're not going up, because a lot of the buyers for steel, they are waiting on the sidelines expecting a further fall in the prices. So you see, at some point, the government, once the inflation cools off, maybe end of this year or maybe sometime next year, they'll have to relook at this export duty and probably withdraw it. Because otherwise, then, for the companies and for economy as a whole, it may not be good. Because so much of excess of steel will come and the glut, and what will happen to all that expansion, 20,000 crores JSW Steel, imagine they're talking about. So they say, even if there is the export duty, we'll still go ahead with our plans. That is because they feel that somewhere down the line, maybe in a year or so, government will have to withdraw this export duty. So I think the sector will do well from an Indian perspective as such in the long run. And as long as one can ride the cycles, because we are a growing economy. So we will require steel and cement no matter what. And it's going to be required for at least 10, 20 years. It's not going to, just fizzle out. And it's not like US or other countries which are already developed. Second thing is your Ukraine and Russia war. Once that ends, which it will at some point, then there's a lot of rebuilding that will take place there. So a lot of the cities which have been destroyed and gone down and all, then a lot of steel and cement will be required there. So cement, I don't know what we can export, but steel, yes, then that time it will make it kind of profitable for Indian companies to export steel, because a lot of the companies there have gone down or have been destroyed. So they will not be able to ramp up as much once the demand surges. So India can play a great part in exporting steel profitably to Ukraine. And since they are not exporting, then that kind of their supply is not there, And Russia, because Russia is not being attacked, it is Ukraine. So Russian steel is coming into India currently, and they are selling at throwaway prices. So that's a bit of a concern, because they can't, send to Ukraine and other countries which have put a lot of sanctions on them.
Any idea how much of Russian steel in terms of tonnage has come to India in the last 1 year or last 2 months?
In the last 1 month, about 1.5 lakh tons has come, which is not a lot. I mean, if you look at the annual capacity of India, 118 million tons. I mean, compared to that 1.5 lakh, but it's not about the number, the volume. It's about the trend. If there is a trend developing of steel being dumped by Russian companies, steel companies into India, then that's a bit of a threat for Indian companies. Then government, what they may have to do, they may have to put anti-dumping duties, maybe, to kind of prevent that and protect the domestic industry. But then, what will happen is, on one side you're saying anti-dumping duties, and other side you're saying 15% export tax. So, that kind of doesn't then, gel, it becomes very contradictory. So those are challenges which are there, which can probably happen in due course of time. But I think markets will adjust to all this. Demand is there in India for sure. Demand will come back. Economy, I am of the firm opinion, probably sometime next year, our Indian economy will bounce back very sharply. And Indian markets will really do very well, stock markets, because our fundamentals are so strong that our inflation is only 7.1% compared to 9.4 in UK and 9.1 in the US. And we are some in better control, and our structural reforms, those things will really support us. So even though the rupee is going down, the dollar is appreciating, and that is the rupee is falling, but at some point the rupee will appreciate and probably come back to maybe 75 to 77 band, and then things will stabilize. And next year there will be a very good time for Indian economy and Indian markets. So I feel that Indian investors should stay put, not worry about whatever this global turmoil is going on. Things will eventually. You see, 2008. I mean, that was far worse than what is happening today. The global financial crisis. Look at the way in the matter of 6 to 8 months, the market bounced back so sharply worldwide. So we will bounce back more than the other global markets because our fundamentals are far stronger. We are on a much better footing. So from that perspective, your metals and all that will obviously will do well, right? Because when there is a bounce back in the economy, then demand again will surge for all your metals back. Your steel and copper and aluminium, everything will go up. So that is what I'm saying. One has to understand these things to be able to ride the cycle. Today, these steel companies' stocks are going down, and they probably will go down further because of the factors. But sometime next year, you can possibly have again an upsurge and upcycle coming into the metals, and especially into steel and copper and some of those metals.
Prince, I'm trying to add Aman as speaker. He has requested, but I'm not able to. There's some issues.
Same is the case with me. I was trying to approve his request but unable to do. Anyway, Vajpayee ji, you have any addition on the technical side, or maybe you have been waiting since long? And if we get no more requests, then we will conclude after this. Yeah, Vajpayee ji.
थैंक यू प्रिंस जी। पहले तो प्रिंस जी, रविंदर जी, अनिश जी, आप लोगों को जितने हमारे श्रोतागण हैं उनको भी नमस्कार। तो प्रिंस जी, अभी जिन जिन सेक्टर्स पर आप लोगों ने डिस्कस किया, स्टील सेक्टर पर तो अनिश जी ने काफी डिटेल में हम लोगों को बता दिया, तो काफी अच्छी जानकारी मिल गई। अब जैसे अभी आप लोगों ने तीन सेक्टर का डिस्कस किया था, उसमें से मैं सबसे पहले भंसाली इंजीनियरिंग कंपनी के बारे में बात हो रही थी, तो मैं केवल एक पॉइंट रखना चाहूंगा कि जैसे हम लोग अभी कल भी एक स्पेस पर डिस्कस कर रहे थे, वहाँ अनिश जी भी थे और इन्फ्लेशन पर बात हो रही थी, तो एक सज्जन ने उस पर काफी आपत्ति व्यक्त की कि ये सब कितना, इससे कितना दिन हम सुनेंगे। तो मैं ये बताना चाहता हूँ, देखिए भंसाली इंजीनियरिंग का रिजल्ट रिसेंटली डिक्लेयर हुआ, उसका एबिटा मार्जिन कितना रिड्यूस हो गया, और इस कंपनी का लास्ट अक्टूबर से कंटिन्यूअस डाउन ट्रेंड ही चल रहा है। कंपनी एज सच फाइनेंशियली मजबूत है, सब बातें हैं, कहीं कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, बट चूंकि उसका एक्सपेंडिचर रॉ मटेरियल की कीमत बढ़ती जा रही है, और धीरे धीरे जैसे जैसे क्वार्टर टू क्वार्टर हम वो रिजल्ट देखेंगे तो हमें उनका इम्पैक्ट दिखाई पड़ेगा, तो उसकी वजह से ये सस्टेन नहीं कर पाया। तो आज हम 50% का उसका रिट्रेसमेंट हो चुका है अपने हाई से, बट फंडामेंटली या ये के लिए फाइनेंशियली कंपनी साउंड है। तो जैसे 102 पर उसका एक अच्छा सपोर्ट है, और 102 के नीचे फिर एक 86 रुपीज पर सपोर्ट है। आई होप 86 शुड नॉट ब्रेक। तो इन बिंदुओं को हम लोगों को ध्यान में रखने की बहुत ही आवश्यकता रहती है कि कंपनी में अगर एक बार रिजल्ट खराब आने शुरू हुए तो हमें उसकी डीप स्टडी करने की बहुत आवश्यकता रहती है कि वो ये रिजल्ट क्यों खराब आने शुरू हुए। अगर थोड़ा सा भी स्लाइड होगा तो देखिए जितना भी स्मार्ट इन्वेस्टर है वो तो सबसे पहले रिएक्ट करता है, क्योंकि उसका अपना पैसा नहीं होता, वो हमारा पैसा मैनेज कर रहा है, तो वो इमीडिएटली वहां से निकल के कहीं ऐसी जगह पर जाएगा जहां उसको ग्रोथ दिख रही होगी। तो फर्स्ट थिंग तो इसके ऊपर मैं संक्षेप में मैंने आपको रखा। अब शुगर इस सेक्टर के बारे में भी चर्चा हुई थी, तो शुगर सेक्टर में मैं थोड़ा सा उस पर पॉजिटिव व्यू रखता हूँ। जो गवर्नमेंट ने रिसेंटली जो पॉलिसी अभी चेंज की है कि डायरेक्टली शुगर केन जूस से जो उन्होंने शुगर के जगह पर एथेनॉल बनाने की परमिशन देने की बात हुई है, और शायद ये जो करंट हमारा नया पेराई सन शुरू होगा उसमें ये इम्प्लीमेंट हो जाएगा। तो मेरा ये मानना है कि शायद इनका कुछ ना कुछ एबिटा मार्जिन इससे इम्प्रूव होना चाहिए। और एबिटा मार्जिन इसलिए इम्प्रूव होना चाहिए कि इनके पास शुगर बनाने के बाद एकाएक सारी शुगर बिक नहीं पाती है, काफी स्टोरेज करना पड़ता है, काफी दिन तक रखना पड़ता है। तो एथेनॉल में उनके सामने ये समस्या नहीं रहेगी। और अभी शुगर बनाने के बाद जब सीरा बनता था सीरे से बनाते थे, तो उससे फिर उनकी कास्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन में कहीं ना कहीं जरूर इम्प्रूवमेंट आएगा, ऐसा मेरा मानना है। और कई सीनियर एनालिस्ट भी इसको एक्सेप्ट कर रहे हैं। लेकिन इसमें भी ध्यान रखने की जरूरत है कि अच्छी क्वालिटी की कंपनी, जैसे रविंद्र जी ने चेक किया था, मैं अभी डिस्कस भी किया था, तो हमको अच्छी क्वालिटी की कंपनी में ही आ, हमेशा चॉइस रखनी चाहिए। और प्रयास ये करना चाहिए कि जब आपको मान लिया शुगर सेक्टर की बात हो रही है, शुगर सेक्टर में कुछ पॉजिटिव चीज अगर लग रही है, तो आप हमेशा अपॉर्चुनिटी ढूंढिए। जिस समय मार्केट में करेक्शन आता है, 1500 पॉइंट गिरता है, तो वहां पर जो करेक्शन पे अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलती है उसमें हमें थोड़ा थोड़ा निवेश करने का प्रयास करना चाहिए। जैसे अभी बलरामपुर चीनी का इन्होंने रविंद्र जी ने बताया कि ये बिल्कुल सही बात है कि कंपनी कंटिन्यूअस बाई बैक कर रही है। हालांकि कई बार बाई बैक को लोग अच्छा नहीं मानते, लेकिन अगर कंपनी के पास पैसा है और कैपेसिटी बढ़ाने की उसे आवश्यकता नहीं है, उस पैसे का वो कहीं इस्तेमाल नहीं हो रहा है, तो वो एटलीस्ट अपनी इक्विटी को रिड्यूस करके पी रेशियो बढ़ जाता है उससे, और हमारे जो इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं उनको भी कुछ ना कुछ फायदा मिल जाता है। तो जहां पर इस प्रकार का थिंकिंग हो मैनेजमेंट की, तो उन कंपनियों के बारे में एक पॉजिटिव रूप बनता है। बट उसको भी आप अपने टेक्निकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से देख लें, जहां पर करेक्शन होता है वहां पर उसमें एंट्री करने के लिए सोचें। और भी कंपनियां, कई कंपनियां शुगर की जो अच्छी हैं, तो अपने अपने हिसाब से हम लोग दे सकते हैं। तो इस सेक्टर पर मेरा तो भी पॉजिटिव है। टेक्निकली भी बहुत वीक नहीं हुए हैं अभी स्टॉक सेक्टर। हाँ, जो कंपनियां लॉस में चल रही हैं वो जरूर वीक हो गई हैं। तो मैं यही बार बार सबको सजेस्ट करना चाहूंगा कि आप जब भी इन्वेस्टमेंट करने का विचार बनाते हैं तो कंपनी की प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी को जरूर देख लें कि कंपनी प्रॉफिट में अगर है, या अगर लॉस में है तो क्या उसका लॉस रिड्यूस होना शुरू हुआ है, कोई ऐसा उसका अंदर कोई घटना हुई हो जिससे कि उसके लॉस घटने की संभावना हो, या उसका एबिटा इंप्रूव होना शुरू हुआ है, तो 1-2 क्वार्टर में कंपनियां अपने लॉस को वाइप आउट कर सकती हैं। तो आप वहां पर एक बार रिस्क ले सकते हैं अपनी स्मॉल कैपिटल से। जहां तक सीमेंट सेक्टर की चर्चा हो रही थी, सीमेंट सेक्टर में देखिए दो स्टॉक जो बड़े स्टॉक हैं वो टेक्निकली वीक हो गए थे। अब जब कोई स्टॉक 35% 40% टूटता है, तो मेजर सपोर्ट लेवल, जैसा मैंने पहले भी पे स्पेसेस में मेंशन किया था, कि जो हमारा मंथली मूविंग एवरेज होता है हम उसी को लॉन्ग टर्म के पर्सपेक्टिव से देखते हैं। तो 34 मंथ एंड 50 मंथ, और इसके बाद अगर 50 मंथ भी टूट गया तो ये समझ लीजिए फिर 100 मंथ की बात आती है। तो जो बहुत अच्छी कंपनियां होती है वो मोस्टली 50 मंथ के आसपास सपोर्ट जरूर ले लेती हैं। तो अभी अल्ट्राटेक सीमेंट ने 50 मंथ के पास सपोर्ट लिया और वहां से 20% का उसमें राइज आ गया, बट टेक्निकली अभी भी वीक है। तो टेक्निकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से इसमें और इंडिया सीमेंट, दो को मैंने, सॉरी इंडिया सीमेंट कह रहा हूँ, जेके सीमेंट, ये दो कंपनियां मुझको टेक्निकली वीक लग रही थी। और इसका आपका अंबुजा सीमेंट का चार्ट ठीक है फिलहाल। तो ये तो टेक्निकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हो गया। अब एक सेक्टर जिसका अभी हम लोग जिक्र नहीं किया, वो हम पेपर सेक्टर के बारे में थोड़ा सा बात करना चाहते थे कि पेपर सेक्टर इस समय आपका बेटर कर रहा है। जैसे हम लोग ऑटो सेक्टर को देख रहे हैं, काफी हाई पे चल रहे हैं स्टॉक, तो आप पेपर सेक्टर में भी देखेंगे तो काफी स्टॉक्स ने डाउन साइड से अपनी रिकवरी करके और रिसेंटली ही उन्होंने अपने नए हाई बनाए। ये बात सही है कि पेपर सेक्टर की कंपनियां बहुत ज्यादा मार्केट कैप उनका नहीं है कि आप बहुत लार्ज कैप में उनको काउंट करें। बट हमें अगर पैसा इन्वेस्ट करना है तो मैं समझता हूँ कि हमें अगर स्मॉल कैप या मिड कैप की भी अच्छी कंपनी मिलती है तो इन्वेस्ट करने में कोई बुराई नहीं है। तो आप ये देखिए कि जो भी कंपनियां लास्ट ईयर का जो हाई था उसके आसपास पहुंच रही हैं या कुछ ने तो अपने हाई को काट भी दिया। तो पेपर सेक्टर भी एक हमको कन्विंसिंग सेक्टर लगता है। तो इस समय जिस प्रकार के माहौल में हम लोग इन्फ्लेशन, राइजिंग इंटरेस्ट कास्ट, इन सब से गुजर रहे हैं, तो ऐसे में हमको थोड़ा सा ऐसे सेक्टर में भी ध्यान रखना चाहिए जहां पर अभी ग्रोथ की गुंजाइश है। इस समय पेपर सेक्टर के साथ एक प्रॉब्लम जरूर है कि उनके रॉ मटेरियल की कीमत बढ़ी हुई है, बट जिस प्रकार से गवर्नमेंट ने अभी रिसेंट पॉलिसी अपनी अनाउंस की है तो इसको बूस्ट तो मिलना ही मिलना है। थैंक यू प्रिंस जी, बस इतना ही मुझे कहना था।
Yeah, man, you can unmute and ask your question, please.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Actually, I joined late, but I just wanted to know how much time do we have so that I can frame my questions accordingly.
Yeah, we can take your questions, no issues. Go ahead.
Okay, okay. I joined in because the topic was about valuations. I would be grateful if someone can just have a brief idea, just give me a brief idea about. There are a lot of parameters that I have been looking for, like PE ratio or PEG ratio. Some people look at for financials, they look at price to book. Some people for chemical companies or research companies like Syngene, people look at price to sales. I just wanted to have an idea, like sector wise, what are the right parameters to look for to value a company?
Ravi, over to you.
Okay, so I'll talk about few sectors. What are the parameters and what should be the valuation benchmark? For BFSI, within BFSI, then let's take two segments. One is lending, which is dependent on your balance sheet, which is like NBFC, housing finance, and banks. So for banks core operation, it should be dependent on price to book, and whether you will get a high price to book or a low price to book, it dependent on your return on equity. If your return on equity and stability of return on equity, if say there is HDFC Kotak which generates 13-15% ROE and that is stable, they get a premium valuation plus they are growing at that clip. That is on banking lending kind of business, banking, NBFC, HFC, consumer finance, even CV financing. Now come to non-lending BFSI companies, which is something like your AMC asset management companies, your CAMS, CDSL. They should be valued on price to earning or dividend yield. You take an inverse of price to earning or dividend yield wherever you find that, and also see what kind of growth they are growing. If they are growing at a very higher clip, and since these companies whatever earnings is generated can easily be converted to cash, then you take a dividend yield also as a proxy. Coming back to IT companies, you look at what the sales growth is, how much is the margin moving up and down, and on that you give a higher or lower multiple on price to earning, PE. Wherever
Right.
your balance sheet is not relevant, you try to look at price to earning or dividend yield kind of parameters. Where balance sheet is important, something like Capex kind of intensity is there. There are two parameters for say cement, steel, producing entity. You can look at EV by EBITDA. You take a gauge of how is the EV EBITDA across sectors and how the EV EBITDA of say particular company, say JSW Steel, how it has traded in last 10 years, and that will give you a gauge what should be a fair EV EBITDA multiple for those companies. Other thing which company people look at steel, especially steel metals, is they try to find out what is the trough valuation given price to book. Say a Tata Steel during trough valuation, the bottom of the valuation, a price to book actually touch zero point 0.6, zero point 0.7, and that is one benchmark people consider it's a kind of bottom kind of valuation. So for balance sheet heavy companies where huge amount of debt is also there, you can take and manufacturing kind of profile, you take EV by EBITDA and then you take this price to book also to gauge whether the valuation is very distressed or not. In these 3 4 parameters, I guess you can classify all kind of industry. If FMCG is there, it's very simple. It is something like FMCG, IT, all are same. Your capex requirement, your working capital requirement is very limited, and your uh, whatever earnings is generated is can be easily converted to cash. You take price to earning or dividend yield as a proxy. There are few distinction you will make in few sectors, where is something like, if I gave an example, page industries, if you take price to earning, it is 60, while other hosiery companies which are from Calcutta, they trade at 20 25 price to earning. But if you inverse price to earning, both of them trade at 1 1.5% kind of dividend yield. So you see how much of earnings actually can easily be converted into cash. If the earnings is totally getting converted into cash, then price to earning is a very good metric. If that is not getting converted very easily into cash and money gets stuck in capex, working capital, then you try to gauge what is the dividend yield of those sectors for those companies through the cycle. So this way you can evaluate any industry and sector.
Fine, fine. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aman, for your question, and I hope you got your answer. And perhaps if you have any follow-up question, we can take up. Otherwise, it's quite late. We may wrap up for today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
Okay,
done. Yeah,
thank you.
I'm done.
So,
Thank you.
guys, thank you for coming today. It is always great to have Ravi and other panelists on our spaces. Anish, Vajpayee ji, Ravindra. So we try to make the spaces interactive as possible. Yeah, valuation is a tricky thing. It is like the most debated topic, but I think Ravi has really made it simple for you guys. But still, if you have any follow-up questions or any doubts on it, you can directly ask Ravi, or maybe over some tweet or maybe anything. So we try to get you the best possible answer. And also, अगर आपको भी कुछ ऐड करना होता है और कुछ क्वेश्चंस होते हैं, तो feel free to send speaker request. In our spaces, it's like everybody's participation is very important. So do connect with our handles if you are liking the space, and so that you get notification the next time we have such spaces. और कोई आपकी सजेशंस या फीडबैक हो तो काइंडली आप वो डीएम में, कमेंट्स में या ट्वीट के माध्यम से हमें दे सकते हैं. थैंक यू रवि, थैंक यू अनीश.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.